In this week's video, I'll be demonstrating centered decreases, that is, decreases with no lean. As always, if you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, there are direct links down in the description. A central double decrease is a decrease in which 3 stitches are reduced to 1 stitch and the center stitch ends up on top. When you stack these decreases repeatedly every few rows, then that central stitch creates a distinct vertical line of knit stitches. So I've knit across the row until I've come to the 3 stitches that are going to be worked together. Now if you look at the way stitches sit on the needle, there's what we call a leading leg and a trailing leg. The leading leg is the leg closest to the tip. That should be the stitch that's the leg of the stitch that's hanging over the front of the needle. And the trailing leg is the one that's hanging over the back. So the trailing leg is connected to the stitch to the left. And the leading leg is connected to the stitch on the right hand needle. So when we slip for decreases, we typically slip as if to knit. This will remount the stitches on the needle so that the leading leg is over the back. Then when we want to pass them over other stitches, they will not be twisted. For the central double decrease, we want to slip 2 stitches, the first 2 stitches, we want to slip them together as if we were knitting them together. So we just enter both stitches at the same time as if we were knitting them together and allow them to slip. So this remounts the stitches so that the leading legs are over the back, but it also reorders them. If you look, you can see that this central spine stitch here is now to the right, and the stitch that had been on the right is now to the left. So we've slipped 2 stitches as if to knit together, and now we're going to knit the 3rd stitch. And now the final step is to pass these 2 stitches that were slipped together. We're going to pass them over the knit stitch. So slipping them together as if to knit 2 together, and then allows us to pass those stitches over so that they are untwisted and so that the center stitch ends up on top. So this is the hat that I knit in stranded color work, and the crown of the hat, the decreases for the crown of the hat use these central double decreases. So you can see the line of decreases, it changes colors as I change colors for my stitch pattern, but the decreased lines are coming all the way up, forming kind of a wheel pattern in the crown of this hat. Another place that central double decreases are sometimes used is in V-neck sweaters. When you're working the ribbing, you'll have a little spine of knit stitches that come up right from the base of the V, and then you work decreases every 2 rows or every 2 rounds, these double decreases here, because as you work the ribbing and the neck hole gets smaller, you need fewer stitches. So you would do some decreases. And that central double decrease allows you to create a nice vertical line of stitches. So for a central single decrease, what we want to do is we want to reduce 3 stitches down to 2 stitches. So in this first example, what we have here is this little central area, triangular shape, where I have some seed stitch, and then on either side of it, I have some stockinette. On every right side row, I was working decreases. I was pairing them. They were mirrored, so I have a left leaning decrease along this edge and right leaning decreases along this edge. And now that I'm at the top of the triangle, I want to continue the stockinette stitch, but I want to get rid of this final seed stitch in the middle. So I'm going to knit again, just like with a central double decrease, I'm going to knit up to the 3 stitches. Effectively, what I'm going to be doing is a left leaning decrease, an increase, and a right leaning decrease. So the first thing we're going to do is a regular SSK decrease. We're going to slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, insert the left needle in front of the 2 stitches, work them together. Now when you look at these 2 stitches, you have the stitch that's lying on front, and then you have the stitch that's in the back. You can see this leg of the stitch is kind of angled off to the left. I'm going to insert my needle through that leg like that so that it's sitting on the needle like this. So now I'm going to knit the 3rd stitch together with this new temporary increase. And then that allows me to close up that triangle, eliminate that stitch, and still retain these 2 stockinette stitches on top. So I've worked a row back so that you can see how this comes together. And so now I just have plain stockinette going all the way across, and that triangle has disappeared. This is not a decrease that you could use in a huge number of situations. It's going to be fairly specific. So you wouldn't be using this decrease, for example, at both edges if you were trying to decrease the edges at the sides, because every time you're reducing 3 stitches to 2 stitches, so an odd number to an even number, and that isn't going to track well if you're stacking them up in that way. So rather than having the 2 decreases worked so that they are angled toward each other, you use decreases that are angled away from each other. And this decrease I originally saw on Ravelry and was called the bunny ears decrease, and I think you'll understand why when you see it. So if we're going to work it in these 3 stitches here, rather than working an SSK like we did in the first decrease, we're going to work a knit 2 together. So we're going to knit these 2 stitches together. So this time we're going to grab the leg of the stitch that's sitting here in front. I'm going to grab it from behind like this, and then I'm going to place it on the needle so that it's angled to the right. Then I'm going to slip that last stitch as if to knit, and then I'm going to work these 2 stitches together as an SSK. And what you'll see is that rather than that center stitch disappearing and the 2 stitches on either side becoming the result, instead you've eliminated the 2 side stitches, and the center stitch remains prominent, and the 2 new stitches are coming out of that center stitch. So it's a bit of a different structure, and it's called bunny ears. You can see how you have the kind of little twisted loops within the center of that stitch. So it's a reverse idea. Now, I don't have any examples of how this might be used. There are people on Ravelry who have used it in different situations, sometimes in lace-like stitch patterns. They've used this particular decrease. The central double decrease is found frequently in knitting patterns, while the centered single decreases are far less commonly used. Because the single decreases transition the fabric from an odd number of stitches to an even number, they won't work in a stacked situation over multiple rows. If you're intrigued with the possibilities of any of these center decreases, I suggest you knit up a swatch and experiment with them to see how you might like to use them, or just try them out for practice. If you have any questions or comments about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rox Rocks, and there's a link to that down in the description box below. If you have questions not related to this video, please ask them in the Rox Rocks group. I upload a new Technique Tuesday video every week, and on Fridays, I upload my Casual Friday podcast videos. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, you can click up here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.